Sound like you've given up.
Oh, no, not really. I've just learned to accept things, that's all.
Well, you'd better start planning for your defence.
Yes, I suppose so.
Really, Margot? Well, thanks for the bashing, because that's just what I needed, a thump on the head, and neither of us knew it. Oh, yes, Margot, I'm back. The funny thing is, we're the only two that know it, and we're going to keep it that way. Because if I play my cards right, I'm going to get out of here for good. Now, we are going to keep my little secret, aren't we? Because if you don't, so help me, I'll kill you. I'll kill you.
You'll never get away with it, Bea. They're bound to find out sooner or later that you're conning them.
Why should they? They already believe I've lost my memory, unless you're going to tell them any different.
Of course I wouldn't.
Of course you wouldn't. Because if I get out of here, you'll be top dog again. But if I don't...
What's going on here?
Nothing, Miss Bennett. Just asking Bea how she was.
Is that why she was hanging on to you by your throat?
Please, you've got me out of here. I can't
Get your hands off me, Smith. You know the penalty for assaulting an officer?
But I can't stand being
Shut
here
up.
alone, please.
Your play acting might fool Dr. Weissman, but it certainly doesn't fool me. Now get to the dining room. The bell went ages ago.
Please let me out of here. You've got
Stand
to
back from the door. Now, to go to the dining room, get your dinner, and come back here.
Well, why can't I eat with the others?
Because the governor says you're to be locked in here until the morning for your own protection. Not that I think you need protection. You obviously set this whole thing up yourself.
You don't believe I deliberately let myself get bashed, do you?
That's exactly what I think, Smith. Now get moving. Jelly's got your fruit taken. Yes.
Hey, do you think Vera knows why I gave you that money?
I don't know. I wish I hadn't have made the bet in the first place.
Oh, you care about it that much, do you?
Well, why not?
You're late, Gaffney. The first course is gone by now.
I'm not that hungry.
Hey, that's Bea's dinner. I was saving it for her.
Well, she's not here, is she?
There she is. Hey, Bea, come over here and get your dinner. I've been saving it for you.
It's nice to have friends, isn't it, Smith? Now go and get your dinner. Did you notice how frightened Gaffney was just then?
No.
No, his mind was elsewhere.
What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing. I'll take Smith back to the cell.
All right, everybody out.
What's wrong with him?
I don't know.
Something strange is going on.
Yes, that's what Jim thinks.
Be easier if you use the tray, Smith. Put that back, Gaffney. You know the rules about no food in the cells.
What about her?
That's different. That's governor's orders. Now, put it back. Come on, Smith. I don't suppose you can remember who attacked you.
No, Mr. Fletcher.
Well, you'll be going back on laundry duty tomorrow. So if there's any sign of you trying to get your own back...
I wouldn't do that even if I knew who it was.
No. If you come in now, Mrs. Brooks, you'll be locked in till the morning.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Very well, then. Good night.
Good night. Habit's a funny thing, isn't it, Bea?
What?
I said, habit's a funny thing. You're pacing up and down the cell just the way you used to all those years ago.
I don't remember.
Oh, I know you don't. As I said, it's just habit. Like Margot in the dining room. She knows she's got no reason to be scared of you anymore, but she didn't fight with you over that dinner, did she? Oh, well, it's just habit. Very hard to break one's habits.
All right, ladies, come on, get the lead out.
Come on, Gaffney. You'll miss breakfast as well as dinner. Get a move on there.
What's the idea of letting me have that dinner last night?
Well, you wanted it, didn't you?
I am supposed to be scared of you, not the other way round. Mum noticed it. So did Vera. Any more mistakes and the whole prison will know.
What am I supposed to do?
Just act like the moron you are, Margot. As if you ran the place. You've been doing it for the last couple of weeks. Shouldn't be too difficult. Any more mistakes, and you'll be sorry.
Hey, I just saw Vinegar Tits and that new screw arriving for work together. So it looks as though we were right about them being on with each other.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, fancy him being attracted to a bag like her.
Oh, I don't know. Old Vera's got a good point.
Yeah, I once heard her say that she was against hanging. She thought it was too good for us.
What are you talking about, Dor?
Nothing.
I asked you what you were talking
Leave her
about.
alone, Margot.
You want to make something of it?
Just leave her alone.
I will, when she tells me what she was talking about. Speak up, Dor. I can't hear you. Want to buy into this bee? Everyone's watching to see what you'll do.
It's none of my business.
I thought not.
Brooks, the governor wants to see you.
What for?
Move and you'll find out.
Take over the press, would you, Lil? Hey, Smith. Give us a light, would you?
Watch it, Margot. Remember, it's only an act.
What you say, Smith? I can't hear you.
You must want to get out of here real bad, Bee.
You are acting as if you want to stay in prison, Mum.
I just think it's inevitable.
It will be if you don't speak to a solicitor.
What's the point? Bee was caught in my house. Mrs. Morris has already talked to the police. They're determined to get a conviction, and they will.
Mum, is there some reason why you want to stay in prison?
Why should there be?
Well, you had yourself deliberately put in here once before.
Oh, that was different. I was on my own. I had no one to turn to.
And you are on your own again now.
Oh, yes, but as I say, it's different. I still see my daughter and her family occasionally. Oh, we're not very close, but we get along. And I quite often go to the country to see Judith Ann and her little boy. He's walking now. You should see him strutting around. He's so proud of himself.
You haven't told your family you're back in here.
No.
You will have to if you are convicted.
Mrs. Davidson, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to give me some reason to fight. But it's hopeless. Being back in here has brought it all back to me, the violence and the pettiness. When you're a convicted criminal, you've no chance.
Well, Smith doesn't agree with you. She's fighting her charges, and with her amnesia, she has a good chance of winning. If she is fighting, so should you. The point is, she didn't know she was an escapee when she came to you.
But I did. I knew exactly who she was and that she'd escaped. Now, no matter what she claims, nothing can change that.
What do you mean, claims?
Just a figure of speech.
Erica Davidson? I see. Send him to my office, will you? Thank you. Dr. Weissman is here to see Smith. Would you bring her to my office, please, Miss Bennett? You still have until tomorrow to change your mind, Mum. And we can still get a solicitor for you.
I won't bother. Thank you, Mrs. Davidson.
Well, I reckon Bee must have lost her memory. Otherwise, she wouldn't let Margot treat her like that.
Yeah, not unless she was so desperate to get out of here, she'd do anything for the chance.
Bee wouldn't do that.
No? Well, whatever it is, we're not going to get any help from her. We're going to have to deal with Margot ourselves.
Don't you try anything or Margot will kill you. You can't do anything with your pacemaker, and I'm not strong enough.
I wasn't thinking of taking her on physically. We're just going to have to work out a way to trick her. I wonder what Bee'd do under the circumstances.
Nothing by the looks of it.
Don't like people whispering, Doreen.
We're just saying that Bee isn't her normal self.
Yeah, I reckon it's a big improvement. Get on with your work.
Smith, the psychiatrist here to see you. If you ask me, it's a waste of time. If he believes your story about losing your memory, then he's the one who needs a psychiatrist.
thank you for letting me use your office so I can speak with Smith again, Mrs. Davidson.
Oh, that's all right. I have an appointment with the department. What are the clippings?
Oh, just some reports from Smith's past.
You're hoping they'll jog her memory.
No, not particularly. I just want to convince her that these things really happened. Put her mind at rest so she's more able to, accept her condition. To be perfectly frank, I don't mind if she never regains a memory.
That's an odd attitude for a doctor.
Well, which would you prefer? With a memory, a double murderess whose only answer to any sort of problem is violence? Or without a memory, a normal housewife trying desperately to bring the strings of a life back together again?
I don't suppose there's any chance that she hasn't lost her memory and that she's faking.
No, not at all. What makes you ask?
Oh, it's just something one of the other women said. It was just a thought, really.
No, I don't think even Smith would be clever enough to keep up the pretense for this long.
You know, I think you'd be disappointed if she were faking. This case absolutely fascinates you.
Well, it does make a pleasant change trying to get someone out of prison rather than trying to keep them in.
Yes, I suppose so. I just wonder whether Smith is the right choice. Come in.
Smith's here.
Oh, good. Bring her in. And would you wait outside, please?
Yes,
Miss
Mrs. Davidson. Inside, Smith.
What's happening in there?
Oh, Smith's talking to Dr. Weissman, wasting his time and mine having to wait for her.
You've got an obsession with that woman, you know that?
What do you mean?
Well, you're always talking about her.
Well, I didn't talk about her last night.
No, you didn't, did you? Is it all right for tonight?
Yes, I'll cook something for us at home. That's if I ever get out of here before the shops close.
Well, don't worry, we can always get some takeaway. Shall I bring my uniform?
What for?
Well, it'll save me going home for it in the morning.
Oh, you waiting to see me, Mr. Harrison?
No, I was just passing by. I'll talk to you later, Miss Bennett.
I'm off to the department. Would you wait here in case Dr. Weissman needs you?
Yes.
Now, do you recognize this woman?
Yes, that's Beryl. We used to run the salon together.
Used to?
Oh, until I woke up in this place and found myself on the run from the police.
She was a friend of your husband's, wasn't she?
Oh, she's a friend of the whole family's. We go down to the beach and on picnics and everything.
You don't remember her having an affair with your husband? And that's why you killed her?
No, I don't.
All right, well, we'll move on to something else. Your daughter, Debbie. Do you remember the circumstances of her death?
No.
What am I going to do, Mum?
Talk to your father.
He's kicked me out, Mum. He brought some woman home about 2 months ago and told me to get out.
Oh, you need help, Debbie. Someone has got to help you.
I wanted you to help me, Mum.
Mrs. Smith?
I don't remember.
Look, I appreciate how difficult this must be for you, but you understand we've got to go through it. I've got to know exactly how much you don't remember. Now, it seems to cover a considerable length of time. More than 10 years.
Look, can a bump on the head do that to you, Doctor?
Well, not entirely, no. But you see, the knock on the head was just a trigger. The mind itself shuts off any memories that may be too, well, unhappy to remember. The mind's protecting you.
Funny sort of protection leaving me like this.
Well, it may work in more ways than one. I've already discussed the situation with your solicitor. Now, he feels if you can't remember being in prison, then you can't be held responsible for escaping. He thinks you should get off without any further sentence.
What happens after the trial? Do I have to come back here?
I'm afraid so. Although, if your memory doesn't return, there's a very strong argument for you being released later on. Well, doesn't seem to make you very happy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doctor. I suppose I'm just becoming like the rest of the women in here. My roommate, Mrs. Brooks, she says that once you get in here, you never get out.
Well, in this case, we may just prove her wrong.
What's the matter? Didn't he believe you?
Oh, yes, he believed me, right?
Then why so glum?
He showed me the coroner's report and how Debbie died.
It made you feel guilty, did it? Using Debbie's memory like that? Well, you've used so many people, I wouldn't have thought one more would make any difference.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, come off it, Bea. I know you'd lost your memory when you arrived at my place, but you've got it back now. What's the point? Now you're just using it to try and get out of here, and you don't care who gets hurt in the process. How you could stand by and let Margot beat up young Doreen, I don't know.
Well, you were there too.
Well, I couldn't have stopped her. You could.
What was I supposed to do? Give myself away and spend the rest of my life rotting in here just to save Doreen a beating? She's had plenty.
There was a time when your friends always would have come first.
Yeah, well, things changed. There was a time when you had some guts. But you're not even going to fight in court tomorrow. If you think what I let Margot do to Doreen was bad, it's nothing to what's going to happen to you in court. You could die in here.
But I've got no choice.
You could say you were too frightened to go to the police. You could say I threatened to kill you.
And what would that do to your case?
Nothing. I had lost my memory. I don't remember a thing. Mum, you've got to fight. You can't let them grind us into the dirt. Don't worry, I won't let Margot hit Doreen again.
Well, how will you manage it without giving yourself away?
Oh, don't you worry. I'll manage it.
The doctor told me not to hurry. You should have thought of that before. You could have spoken to a solicitor earlier instead of leaving it this late. I should have been up 20 hours ago.
What's the matter, Vera? Frightened he won't wait for you?
Given up pretending you don't know what's going on, have you, Smith?
No, just something I heard one of the other women saying. Mind you, I can't remember which woman it was.
Be careful, Bea. You'll give yourself away.
Oh, everyone knows Vera doesn't believe me. And no one's going to believe her unless she can get someone to back her up. You're not going to give evidence against me, are you, Mum?
I'm afraid I may have to. Oh, not about your amnesia. About the things I saw you do when we were in here together before. My solicitor thinks it will help explain why I was afraid to go to the police when you arrived at my house.
What sort of things?
Oh, the fights with Frankie. The riot when Bill Jackson was killed. Burning young Lynn's hand under the press.
Did I really do all those things? Well, just as well I can't remember. I'd never be able to sleep at night.
Has Vera really got a boyfriend?
Yeah. It's a new screw, Harrison. Takes all types, doesn't it?
Come on, ladies, up you get. Now, these dresses have been laundered for your court appearance today. I'll be escorting you to court, so be ready at reception at 9 o'clock sharp. Mrs. Brooks, you better take your tablets along with you. Could be a long day.
Yes, all right.
And remember, 9 o'clock sharp.
Oh, well, it'll be nice putting a proper dress on for a change. Still, who knows, after today, I might be wearing this sort of dress all the time.
Yes, and then maybe you'll be able to come and visit me.
Without the cops busting in, you mean? Look, don't get your hopes up too high, Mum. Even if the court lets you off, the parole board could still get you.
No. Mrs. Morris is my parole officer, and she's already told me that if I'm not convicted, she won't be putting in an adverse report to the board. I'll be free.
Good luck.
Same to you. What are you going to do about Doreen?
Don't you worry. I'll fix that on the way to the showers. All right, you two, get lost.
You heard her.
What's up, Bea? You ran out of coffee.
Don't try and be smart, Margot. It doesn't suit you. I've come to warn you. All this stuff about being top dog, you are laying it on too thick.
How do you mean?
I mean like thumping Doreen and trying to make me light your cigarettes. Just remember, you're only pretending.
But I'm not, Bea, am I? You're the one that's pretending. You think you're top dog, but you can't enforce it. And if you can't enforce it, you haven't got it, have you? So give us a light, would you?
I can enforce anything I want. Now, just remember, all I have to do is wait till the screws unwound. Now, don't thump Doreen, and don't try and make me light your cigarettes. And just remember, you are only pretending. Now, sit down. Here, Margot, you haven't finished your coffee. Oh, Margot, you're so careless.
Miss Bennett,
What are you doing here in your dressing gown, Gaffney? You ought to be dressed and at breakfast by now.
I've been scalded.
Where? Oh, hardly a mark.
By B. Smith. Her amnesia's all a lie. She just beat me up because I wouldn't go along with her plan.
Are you prepared to make a statement to that effect?
What happens to me afterwards if I do? Smith will kill me. Get me transferred to Barnhurst and I'll talk.
Barnhurst is medium security. They'll never let you go there.
I'm sure it could be arranged if it was for Gaffney's protection. After all, she is cooperating. Leave it with me. I'll arrange it. Now get back to the dining room, or Smith might suspect something.
Yeah, right.
You can't make a deal like that without checking with the governor first.
All right, I'll check with her. I told you Smith was faking.
Morning.
Morning.
Oh, good morning. What are you doing here? I thought you'd be in court for Mrs. Brooks' trial.
Yes, I will be there, but I just want to see one of the ladies about a parole first.
Gaffney will be going to court with you as well.
You're not going to put me in the same paddy wagon as B.
You'll be all right as long as you keep your mouth shut.
G'day, B.
What's she doing here?
Gaffney's appealing against her sentence. She'll be appearing in the court next to yours.
You wouldn't remember all that, B, not with your amnesia.
All right, come on, out you go.
Where's Gaffney going to court?
She's going to testify against Smith to prove once and for all that her amnesia is a pack of lies.
Right, ladies, inside.
Here, how come she's in with us if she's appearing in a different court?
There isn't room anywhere else.
I would have been in a different cell.
There isn't any room, Gaffney, so keep quiet. Smith and Mrs. Brooks will be in court soon, so you'll have the place to yourself.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes, that's right.
My name's Harper. I'm appearing for Mrs. Brooks and Mr. Smith. I wonder if I could have a word with my clients alone, please.
Yes, of course. Come on, Gaffney.
Right, there's just a few procedural points I'd like to go through with you before we get into court.
How can you defend both of us?
Pardon?
If Mum's case depends on blackening me, you're not going to do me much good.
Mum.
That's what the women in prison call me.
Oh, I see. Oh, I don't think there'll be any conflict of interest. Mrs. Brooks' defence depends upon her knowledge of you before you lost your memory. Your defence depends upon us convincing them of your amnesia. We'll do that first. We'll discuss the legal arguments in the judge's chambers. Once that's been established, the trials can proceed. No, you won't be required to say anything since you'll be pleading guilty.
Guilty?
Guilty with mitigating circumstances. Don't worry so much, Mrs. Smith. Just trust me.
You think I'll get off then?
I think so. It'll help when you go to court. You don't appear quite so alert. Judges seem to have a very fixed view about how amnesiac behaves.
Now, what's all this about, George? Guilty with mitigating circumstances. Are you saying it isn't Smith's fault she escaped?
Amnesia, Your Honour. She was knocked out in an accident. It caused her to lose her memory. She couldn't remember being in prison. Therefore, she can't be held responsible for escaping.
Oh, that's very good, George. Have you got any evidence of this amnesia?
Of course.
Found yourself a tame psychiatrist, have you, George?
Well, he found me. Dr. Wiseman, the Department of Corrective Services.
Carl. Is he giving evidence?
He's outside now.
Oh, wheel him in. Oh, Carl isn't easily fooled.
Oh, come in, please, Doctor.
Thank you. Carl, how nice to see you.
Your Honour.
You know Frank Waller, don't you?
How are you?
Bit unusual to find you giving evidence for the defence.
Yes.
A coffee?
No, thanks, Your Honour.
Well, sit down, sit down.
Thank you.
Now, what's all this about amnesia? Genuine, is it?
Well, I think so. I was called to the Wentworth Detention Centre by Erica Davidson. She was convinced that Smith had lost her memory. After examining her, I agreed.
When was this?
About a week after she was recaptured. She was still showing signs of disorientation. No recollection at all of any of the events connected with her two imprisonments.
So she claimed.
I believed her.
Have any other doctors examined her?
No, but we will be doing further tests. Now, if her memory doesn't return, it raises the question of whether she should be in prison at all. She could be released on psychiatric grounds.
And what if her memory does return?
Well, it doesn't affect this case, does it? The point is, if she had lost her memory at the time of the crash and wandered off, she was not responsible for her actions.
That seems pretty clear. And what do you make of it, Frank?
The whole thing's a fraud. Smith's obviously pulling the wool over everyone's eyes.
You're questioning my professional opinion without evidence.
But I do have evidence, Doctor. I have a witness who's prepared to swear that Smith's amnesia story is just a pack of lies.
Medical evidence?
One of the other prisoners.
Oh, I see. Well, the respective merits of the evidence will have to be decided by the jury. All I can say is that if the amnesia is proven, I shall direct the jury to accept the plea of guilty with mitigating circumstances. I take it Mrs. Brooks is still pleading not guilty?
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Very well. I'll see you all in court.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Wiseman now. You know we don't.
Members of the jury, you have already heard the evidence of Detective Sergeant Rouse concerning the accused's escape from custody and her eventual recapture at the home of Mrs. Brooks. These facts the defense does not dispute.
The prosecution claims to have evidence that your amnesia is contrived.
I can't have.
At the time of her escape.
You sure?
Mr. Hartman, when I was arrested, I couldn't remember a thing.
Especially
I still
when you
can't.
hear the evidence of our next witness. The prosecution calls Margot Jane Gaffney to the stand.
Call Margot Jane Gaffney.
Who's she?
She's a prisoner from Wentworth.
She got any evidence that could affect our case?
No.
Place your right hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Please be seated.
You are Margot Jane Gaffney, currently an inmate of the Wentworth Detention Centre.
That's right.
And you know the accused, Beatrice Alice Smith.
Yeah, we're in the same cell block.
Would you tell the court what conversation took place between you and Smith on the afternoon of the 17th?
Yeah. I was walking along the corridor. She'd been locked in a cell.
Why had she been locked in?
She'd been in a fight.
And what did the accused say to you?
Well, I spoke to her first. I asked her if she was all right. She said she was. She said she didn't mind getting into a fight as long as the screws didn't get onto her. She reckoned no matter what happened, she was going to keep pretending that she didn't know who she was. She reckoned she was going to get out of prison for good.
You bloody liar!
Sit down. Mr. Hartman, you will instruct your client to refrain from such outbursts?
Keep quiet. Carry on like that and this jury will believe anything she says about you. What was Smith's position among the other prisoners prior to her transfer to Barnhurst?
She was top dog. She ran the place.
And since her recapture?
The same. Only she made me pretend that I was running things.
But if what you say is true, you're running a considerable risk testifying against her. But isn't that so?
Yeah.
Well, then why are you testifying?
I want to see justice done.
You're currently serving a 10-year sentence for abduction and armed robbery. And you want to see justice done.
Objection. Witness isn't on trial here.
Objection sustained. The defense counsel's last remark will be deleted from the record. Mr. Hartman, kindly restrict yourself to questions of fact.
Yes, Your Honour. No further questions, Your Honour.
You may step down.
Well, she's not exactly the ideal witness, but she's enough to put doubt into the jury's mind. Do you have any other witnesses to this conversation between you?
There was no conversation. She's got it in for me because of something that happened before I was transferred, but I don't know what it was because I can't remember. Maybe Mum knows.
I hardly think Mrs. Brooks is the ideal witness.
Well, even if Bea has got her memory back, what difference does it make? The point is she'd lost her memory when she escaped.
I have not got my memory back. Look, I tell you she's got it in for me. Everyone in the prison knows that.
Mr. Hartman, is this a private conversation or is it something we should all hear?
I'm sorry, Your Honour, but in view of the prosecution's surprise witness, we'd like a short recess to prepare our response.
You don't seem to have prepared your defense very thoroughly, Mr. Hartman. Very well. We'll reconvene at 11:10.
All stand.
Now we should be able to talk in here.
Now, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I'd like your views on the relationship between Smith and Gaffney. Is it true there's bad blood between them?
Well, yes, it was just the usual jockeying for position, wanting control over the other women.
And until recently, Smith would have won out?
Yeah, until recently.
Mr. Fletcher, I'd like you to appear as a witness for the defense.
Well, I don't see how I can help you. I don't even know whether I want to help you. I'm not convinced that Smith lost a memory.
All I want you to do is go into court and tell the truth.
All right. But don't blame me if what I've got to say doesn't help your case.
Well, don't worry, I won't. Now, perhaps you give me some background information on this feud between Smith and Gaffney.
Well, like I said, it was the usual power struggle. It happens in any prison. So it doesn't matter whether it's a men's prison or a women's prison. Somebody has to be top dog.
And at Wentworth, prior to a transfer to Barnhurst, it was B. Smith.
Yes, that's right.
Then it'd be true to say it was partially due to this control over the women that Smith was transferred.
Well, yes, I suppose so.
So what happened when Smith, as top dog, was moved? Presumably there was a fight to take place.
Objection, Your Honor. Defense is leading the witness. But where, I cannot tell.
Objection sustained. Although I presume you do have a point to make, Mr. Hartman.
I'm trying to establish that the witness Gaffney has a motive for deliberately wishing to malign the defendant, Your Honor.
Very well. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, what did happen when Smith departed?
Well, as you said, there was a fight to take place.
And who won this fight?
Gaffney.
So, when Smith returned to the Wentworth Detention Centre, presumably Gaffney felt her newfound position as top dog threatened. A position she'd fought hard to obtain.
Objection.
I withdraw the remark. I'd like to move on to a statement given to the court earlier by Margot Gaffney. She stated the alleged conversation took place while Smith was locked in a cell. When asked why Smith was locked in a cell, she replied, she was in a fight. Could you tell the court exactly why Smith was locked in a cell?
Yes, it was for her own protection.
Can you explain?
Well, when Smith went missing earlier in the day, we mounted a search. We found her in the storeroom. She'd been beaten up, so the governor ordered her to be locked in her cell for her own protection.
Was it ever established who attacked Smith?
No, she couldn't or she wouldn't identify her attacker.
Perhaps she was afraid. Tell me, who in prison would have enough muscle to order Smith to be beaten up?
Objection, Your Honor. Defense is asking witness for an opinion.
I don't think the question needs answering anyway, Your Honor.
Objection sustained. Strike the last question from the record. And I must warn you, Mr. Hartman, not to try to make mileage out of questions that have been judged inadmissible. Proceed with your questioning.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher.
Just wait till I get along Gaffney pick up Wentworth.
Dr. Wiseman, you've heard the prosecution witness claim that Smith's amnesia is feigned. Is there any chance, do you think, that your opinion of Smith's condition is wrong?
That's always a possibility. Nobody's infallible. However, I have had considerable experience with the criminal mind.
You've been employed by the Department of Corrective Services for how long?
15 years.
15 years. And in that time, it'd be pretty unusual for you to appear for the defense.
Pretty unusual, yes. Unless I'm convinced the defense case is just.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman. You may step down. Mr. Waller, will you be presenting any medical evidence regarding the defendant's medical state?
No, Your Honor.
Well, in that case, this may be a good time to explain to the jury the defendant's plea. Basically, if you accept the defense's medical evidence that Smith had lost her memory at the time she escaped lawful custody, and the prosecution are offering no alternative medical evidence, then you must accept the plea of guilty with mitigating circumstances. Clearly, if the accused has no memory of ever having been in legal custody,
yes.
she cannot be held responsible for escaping from such
Mrs. Morris isn't even here yet. She's my only witness.
Now, shall we move on to hear evidence?
Don't
on the
worry, she'll be
charges?
here. I hope so.
Oh, hello, Mr. Sutton.
Oh, Mrs. Morris.
You wanted to see me about Nick?
Yes.
Well, how's he handling his first day?
He didn't turn up.
What?
He didn't turn up. But it doesn't matter anyway. I've been on to the CES and they're sending somebody else down.
Oh, well, there must be some explanation. Look, if I could get hold of him straight away, would his job still be available?
Ah, it's too late.
Couldn't you give him just one more chance?
He's had his chance. Look, Mrs. Morris, there are thousands of kids out of work and I end up doing this job myself. Now, I'm not giving him special treatment just because he's got a criminal record.
I'm not asking for special treatment.
That's exactly what you're asking for. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morris, but there are too many kids who want to work. And if he's too lazy, I reckon you're wasting your time with him.
We have heard evidence that at the time of the capture, B. Smith had no recollection of having been in prison. I don't want to comment on that just now. The point is that regardless whether B. Smith knew who she was or not, Mrs. Brooks was very familiar with her. They had spent many years together in prison. Mrs. Brooks was aware that when Smith arrived at her home, she must have escaped from legal custody. Despite this, she did not call the police. She, in fact, attempted to aid her escape. I would like to recall Detective Sergeant Philip Rouse to the stand.
Call Detective Sergeant Philip Rouse.
Who are you looking for now? Mrs. Morris. She still hasn't arrived. Don't worry, she'll be here.
You realize, Sergeant Rouse, you are still under oath?
I do.
Sergeant, when you received news that Beatrice Smith had escaped legal custody, what action did you take?
The usual. We checked all known associates, warned them that it was an offence to assist Smith, and that they should contact the police immediately if they saw her.
And it was in this capacity that you visited the home of Mrs. Brooks?
Yes. We later placed the house under surveillance when we received information that Smith had visited the premises.
From where did you get that information?
Mrs. Morris, the accused's parole officer.
And whilst you were watching the house, what happened?
We saw Smith enter the premises. We followed her in and caught Brooks handing her money. We then arrested both Smith and Brooks.
No further questions?
Like a beer?
No, I do not want a beer. What do you think you're doing?
Having a drink.
That's not what I meant. Why aren't you at work?
I didn't think being stuck in that warehouse all day sounded like much fun.
Oh, and I suppose this is your idea of fun, is it? Lying around at 11 o'clock in the morning getting drunk.
It's all right.
It is not all right. I went to a lot of trouble to get you that job. And it's not only me you've let down. You've ruined it for every other parolee I try and get work for. Have you any idea how hard it is to get a job these days, even without a criminal record? Well, have you?
Suppose so.
Oh, you suppose so. You're hopeless. No wonder your father gave up on you. Is this your mother, Nick? No, I am not his mother, thank goodness.
Yeah, well, I didn't ask for your help, did I?
You haven't any choice, have you? If I don't help you, you know where you'll end up. Could we have this conversation without your friend?
Sure.
Well, come on. I'm sorry I spoke to you like that in front of your friend. Didn't mean to embarrass you.
I wasn't embarrassed.
Weren't you? I would have been. Why didn't you turn up for that job?
I don't know.
You seem to be deliberately making life difficult for yourself. Why?
Honestly, Mrs. Morris, I just don't know. I guess because everyone else has given up on me. I've given up on myself.
I haven't given up on you.
No. But it's your job, isn't it?
It's a little bit more than that. If I didn't really care, the money they pay me wouldn't be nearly enough.
Then why do you do it?
Because I do care.
I'm sorry I let you down.
It's not me you've let down.
No. You think it'd help if I went to see Mr. Sutton now?
You won't get that job.
I know, but if I just apologised...
Well, I suppose it could help.
Would you come with me?
No, I'm due in court.
Well, what about later on?
I'm going to be tied up all day. As a matter of fact, I must be off now. I'll see you later.
Heard the prosecution witness claim that there was no threat of violence to Mrs. Brooks at the time of her arrest.
What's he waffling on about that for?
Mrs.
We've already
Brooks
been
was
through
afraid
that.
and had in fact contacted the authorities on a previous occasion when Smith had visited her home.
Mr. Hartman, are you going to call a witness to prove Mrs. Brooks contacted the authorities?
Yes, Your Honour.
Then kindly do so. You'll have plenty of time for your summation later.
Yes, Your Honour. Call Mrs. Margaret Morris.
Call Mrs. Margaret Morris.
Well, Mr. Hartman?
I'm sorry, Your Honour. It appears the witness has been... here she is, Your Honour.
About time. Well, let's get on with it, shall we? I do have other cases to hear.
When Mrs. Brooks came to you and told you Smith was at her home, what did you do?
We went back to Mrs. Brooks's house. We thought that if we could persuade Mrs. Smith to give herself up, it would help her.
And what did you find?
She'd left.
I see. Thank you, Mrs. Morris. No further questions?
Mrs. Morris, you say that Mrs. Brooks came to see you with this information. Why didn't you phone?
Because Mrs. Smith was at the house at the time.
Well, in that case, wouldn't it have been quicker to use a public phone?
I suppose so.
In fact, wouldn't it have been quicker for her to phone the police?
Yes, it would have. But people who've been in prison often don't like to speak to the police.
Yes, people that have been in prison. Isn't it true, Mrs. Morris, that Mrs. Brooks took so much time getting to your office that Mrs. Smith had time to make her escape?
Yes.
In fact, if Mrs. Brooks was helping Smith to escape, coming to see you would be an ideal way of covering her tracks, would it not?
Well, I don't know.
Objection, Your Honour. Prosecution is asking the witness for an opinion.
Objection sustained. The jury will disregard the last question. Proceed, Mr. Waller.
Mrs. Morris, on the second occasion that Smith visited Mrs. Brooks' home, the occasion when she was actually arrested there, did Mrs. Brooks advise you that Smith had returned?
No, but there wouldn't have been time.
Mrs. Morris, just answer the question, yes or no. Did Mrs. Brooks advise you that Smith had returned?
No.
No. She didn't advise the police either. Thank you, Mrs. Morris. No further questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris. You may step down.
Blast. Blast, blast. I may still get off. I've still got my own evidence to give.
Oh, yeah, and they're going to listen to you, aren't they? Especially after the way our counsel has managed to get right up the judge's nose. It's not fair. You've tried to do the right thing by everyone. It looks like you're going to go down. It looks like I'm going to get away with it.
Well, you've worked very hard for it, Bea.
Yeah, well, it's not fair. Hey, you out there, come on, open up.
Yeah.
I want to speak to our counsel.
He's at lunch. All right. I'll see if I can find him.
Bea, what's the point of speaking to him?
I'm going to testify for you. I can't stand by and let you go back to jail.